That's hard to say. Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. So I'm playing India Ari this morning. And um I am I'm playing India Ari. I got distracted. Sorry about that. I'm playing India Ari and it's called I Choose. And her chorus says, I choose to be authentic in everything I do. My past don't dictate who I am. I choose. You never know where life is going to take you. But today, you and me and everybody has an opportunity to choose. Life is going to do what it do. But every day, we have an opportunity to choose. And so I chose to reflect on that this morning, or play that song, India Ari, I Choose, is because today I wanted to talk about, or this morning for Talk About It Tuesday, I wanted to talk about being in this moment. We all know, I don't need to rehash or offer my social, political, religious commentary on the events of this past weekend, and the ways in which we saw hatred and evil manifest itself in Charlottesville. We definitely give a moment of silence and respect to the lives lost and to the numbers of people who are injured. Thanking all of those many people, those courageous people who decided to join others of moral courage and faith, to join others who want to build a world that is truly living up to its ideals of love and justice and freedom. And so we are thankful to Spirit and the Divine, and to moral courage, for those men and women and individuals who were at Charlottesville this past weekend. And so I'm sure many of you have already read the many different commentaries. Y'all have watched all the shows, all of the, I mean, y'all probably have done it all, right? I don't need to go into that. And so what I offer for our consideration today is this idea of what it means to be in the moment, to being in this moment. And I'm asking us, and I'm pushing us, and myself included, to reflect on this idea of being in this moment. Because so many times when we are, and I will use a heavy word of assaulted, when our eyes, our ears, our emotions are assaulted with the images and the rhetoric that we have been subjected to over the past 72 hours, that our being, the human person that we are, sometimes we want to get past it because it's hard to sit in our feelings. It's hard to be where we are in this moment. It's hard to even figure out how to see a way forward, right? And so what I'm asking us to talk about today is, what does being in this moment look like? For you, for us collectively, what does being in this moment call of us? In both a reactive and in a response, but also in a proactive and intentional, strategic way forward. And when I say this, I'm talking about in all areas of our life. The reality is that some of us feel called to being on the front lines. Others of us don't have any sense of call to anything. And still more of us are willing to simply be in community with others that we can support and that we can share and be able to talk about what we see going on in the world. Excuse me. And so I'm reminded of the book of Esther in the Christian text in the Bible, and how Esther talks about the fact that she is the only one that's called to go speak to the king, and the famous words, "for such a time as this," right? And that at that moment for her, supported by and surrounded by a community of people, motivated by the saving of who she identified as her community and her people, to go and to speak to the king that represented power. We have that tradition in the biblical text that tells us, yes, she had this amazing courage to do that. If I perish, let me perish. Such amazing words. But I think, how does that help us today in 2017? How does that help us see what we need to do, or what ways we are being called to respond and to be in this moment? And honestly, beloveds, if you feel okay not doing anything, then amen to that. If you feel okay doing what you do in your sphere of influence, that too is also okay. If you feel called to participating in a bigger, more direct response and action, then that too is okay. The beauty about being in this moment is that we get to choose. Now, I, as a woman of justice, as a pastor that believes that each of us are called with a purpose, as a person of faith and moral courage, I choose to be in the thick of it, in the possibility that there are protests here in Richmond in September. I choose to even now be a space of healing, or space of holding space with each other. Right? That is my being in this moment, right? That I get a chance to reflect on where do I see God and the divine working in this moment. And so I'm asking you, right? How are you being in this moment? What does it mean for you to respond? Recognizing that justice work, or even this work of combating evil, is not a one-time thing. The people are going to come back. Charlottesville is going to happen. People are going to continue to uprise. We already have seen on the news what many people across this country are either planning or have done in an impromptu way. Or we all know, since we're on Facebook, our beloved, I don't even know if we want to use beloved, but our many well-intentioned friends and colleagues that are on our timeline doing their version of preaching and advocating and telling folks what to do and sharing and all this kind of stuff. Even in light of all of that, what does being in this moment mean for you? And who are you being in this moment with? And for real, what are the commitments that ground you in this moment? One of the things I'm giving myself grace about, right? Like the idea that Micah 6:8, which many justice-oriented folks like to quote, what does the Lord require of you, O mortal, but to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. And if you ascribe to that scripture, or even to a moment of figuring out how to live out that scripture, I encourage you to reflect on the piece of loving mercy. What does it mean to have grace and mercy for our neighbors, for our fellow people that we thought would think the same way we think, or we would hope would respond in similar ways that we respond? What does it mean to have some grace for folks who are on the fence in a time where we might think there is really no reason to be on the fence? Like, this is very clear about how we should be responding in this moment. And the idea that I'm offering us today is that being in this moment is more than just a reactionary response. Being in this moment calls for a dynamic, a multifaceted response. It may involve a release of our emotions. It may involve experiencing anger. It may involve that sense of like, what in the world? Like, just this sense of complete wonder at how we got to this point. And even for some of us who are politically adept and open and willing to move in this world, some of us believe that we understand how we got to this point, and we can wax poetically about all of the social political dynamics that made for this moment to be what it is. But that still does not prevent us from making a decision of how to be in this moment. And even in the recognition that being in this moment is also about acknowledging how we move forward. Because this moment will pass to another moment. And then that moment will pass to another moment. And before we all know it, not just you individually, but us collectively, before we know it, we are looking back 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, 1 year, 2 years down the line, and these moments have been strung together into what is the fabric of our lives, into what is this idea of a movement, into being able to say or to reflect on how we have shown up each and every time the quote-unquote moment was presented to us. Sometimes it's overwhelming to me, I can be honest, that being in this moment requires a grounding. It requires an honesty with yourself. It requires an honesty with others. It also requires courage, because when we are completely real, we do recognize, I think we have to recognize, I should say, that many of us live and operate in spaces where our full authentic being is not encouraged or accepted. And there are so many spaces when we're choosing to show up as whatever we need to be in that moment. And so one of the challenges about being in this moment is this almost reckoning with, what is it that you believe? What is it that grounds you, that tells you and that shows you that this is what my work is? And how does being in this moment cause you to really think about what your work is, what your commitment is, what your purpose is? And even in doing that, being able to look around in your community, in our community, particularly here in Richmond, Virginia, and be able to say, you know what, they look to be doing what I want to do. Or he looks to be doing, or she looks to be doing, or they look to be doing what I'm interested in doing. Maybe I can connect with them. Maybe I can find a way to be with them in this moment. I think the reality and the difficulty of being in this moment is that there is no simple answer. And so, if you were like me, which you possibly were, but I'm sharing my truth, yesterday was heavy for me. I had a lot of good conversations. I read a lot of stuff, both on and off Facebook. But I found myself wrestling with, who do I want to be in this moment? And am I choosing this moment to shape who I am? Or am I shaping this moment by who I am? By what grounds me? By the principles and the ideals of faith and of liberation and of wholeness and of justice that ground me. And so what are you grounded by? Right? What are the ideals, the scripture that might guide you, the quote that might anchor your sense of being, the hero or heroine, the individual whose life has given you inspiration to be in this moment. And when you find that grounding, when you settle yourself, it is like a tree planted by the water. I'm smiling because on Sunday, Restoration Fellowship held a community healing space. And someone offered Psalms 1 that talks about being, it is like being a tree that is planted with roots deep by water that refreshes, by water that restores, by water that is ever flowing. And so there's constant change, but there's also constant growth happening. So what are the things that are grounding you? Because part of my sadness in this moment, when I am honest about it, is that there are going to be other moments like this, just because of the world we live in. And since we know, and whether or not we know, I don't know if that's the right word to say, but since I believe that there will be future moments like this, then identifying my grounding helps me to not be swayed left and right by every whim when we see something else happen. So being in this moment, right, means, number one, just a quick recap. Number one, being in this moment means being your full authentic self and finding space where you can be your full authentic self, right? That's important. And do not ever hide who you are for any good reason. And number two, being in this moment is about being grounded and finding what grounds you, what connects you to ways to respond. I would say what connects you to the thing that is your purpose, to the thing that matters. For me, Pastor Lisette, I'm grounded by not just God's love, but also the idea of justice and equity. I am grounded by my role as a healer in the community and a leader. I am grounded by the fact that I may not have all the answers, but I have a hope in what will be, even if there'll be some hard times before we get to that point. That grounding keeps me. And I'm even finding myself looking for some texts, so some books or some articles that remind me that people have been here before. And so I wonder, so I've been looking at Martin Luther King's book, From Chaos to Where Do We Go From Here? From Chaos to Community. I've also been reading a little bit of James Baldwin, Go Tell It on the Mountain. And he also did an essay called White Racism. I think it's called White Racism or White Community or something like that. Because these concepts are not new. So find what grounds you. What are you reading? What music are you listening to? What are you creating? And then the last thing I would say about being in this moment is find your outlet. How are you doing work that makes your soul happy? How are you choosing to be a part of what you may identify as a solution? And for some of us, that is simply showing up to events and to spaces that are already planned by others. For some of us, it means writing for other blogs or posting our thoughts and our reflections on our own blogs or on our Facebook pages. It may be getting on Facebook Live and sharing how you feel. But what are the things that you need to do to get involved? And who are the people of like-mindedness that are doing the things that you see that you may want to do? Or I say, if you don't see it being done, what are you creating? What space are you creating for others that you think are of like-mindedness that are looking for similar things and can work with you and partner with you? Because the reality is that being in this moment is going to help us move forward as we continue to live in a world or in a time and a space that we thought we would never have to come back to. We thought that when the civil rights movement was over, we didn't really think we would have to come back to this. At least I was raised in a way that was like, that was in the past. That is not, you don't have to worry about that. We live in a post-civil rights era. You know, yes, we'll probably always have to deal with racism, but it won't ever be as blatant as it was this past weekend or as it will continue to be. And so for me, that wrestle has been, okay, I see you. And now that I see a different America, a different Richmond, a different world, then I get to choose how to be differently in this world. So find your ways to get connected. And let me just say this, just because it's something that I've wrestled with, and I say this as a point of encouragement to all of you watching and to all of those who will watch this later. Don't let anybody shame your level of participation in this moment. If you want to protest, protest. If you want to sit at home, sit at home. If you want to donate, donate. If you want to host a private party with your friends, do that. If you want to read a book, do that. If you need to write in your journal and create art, do that. If you need to be around people that are loving and kind and caring and are helping you achieve your dreams or helping you live into your full authentic self, honey, do that. Because justice work is not one way. Doing justice, being in this moment, moving forward, becoming the beloved community, hashtag love over fear, hashtag defend, Charlottesville, all of these amazing things, they're going to continue to go forward. Don't let the people of history try to guilt you into having to act in this moment, because what we do realize is that everybody wasn't at every march during the civil rights movement. Every church wasn't participating in what Martin Luther King and Bayard Rustin and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference was doing. Don't let people guilt you in your level of connection and your level of commitment and your level of participation. Be okay with where you are. Be okay with what your being is in the moment. And know that when God has called you for such a time as this, God knows how to get your attention. And be okay with that. Just because me, as Pastor Lisette, I'm very clear on my role. I'm very clear about the space that we're creating. I'm very clear about what justice looks like, or what I hope justice looks like, and what I strive for justice to look like. That is in no way, shape, or form telling anybody else that it has to be the same thing that I'm doing. Now, if you like what I'm doing and you want to, join me in this work, by all means, let's do it together. But understand that in the summary of Howard Thurman, the great mystic and theologian, me being me does not take away from you being you. You still bear the image of God on your likeness. You still are awesome and amazing. You still are created with a purpose. You still are in this community together. You still are cool and creative and loving and kind. And I think you're awesome. And that is okay. I simply am pushing us to really reflect on what being in this moment means. Because this moment is going to pass. The social memory is short. And so just like many of us on Facebook, we have those memories that come up, right? And I was looking at my memories this morning. I'm like, wow, that was 2 years ago. Wow, that was 5 years ago. Wow, that was 7 years ago. This moment is going to be a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago from now. And you want to be able to look on this moment and say, you know what? I was doing all right. I could have done better, or I was doing my level best, or whatever. But being in this moment is calling all of us to be our better selves. And so, a quick summation of my 3 points. And then I will let us go for the day. And I hope that you really do talk about it. I hope that you really do find a way to engage in conversation, whether that's in person with somebody, whether that's via Facebook, whether that is in your other groups and your other spaces. Because being in this moment is going to require us to have some heartfelt conversations with each other, right? Because being in this moment, number one, requires us to be our full authentic self, right? And that does look differently for all of us. Being in this moment, two, calls us to find what our grounding is. What is it? What are you grounded in? Be able to know what your commitments are. Be able to know what inspires you and motivates you and fuels you forward. So you've got to find your grounding. And number three, being in this moment means responding, right? And finding what you need to do. What do you want to be a part of, so that you can help to create the beloved community. I live by the motto, the dripping water smooths the rock. Find your drip. Do your level best to commit to that drip. And I suggest that being in this moment will continue to be an exercise of loving reflection on who you believe God has called and created you to be for such a time as this. I am Pastor Lisette of Restoration Fellowship. Thank you so much for listening and joining me this morning for Talk About It Tuesday. I am here 8 a.m. on Tuesday mornings. I am, if you know me personally, you know that I'm not much of a morning person, but Tuesday mornings have been my day to get up and to interact or to reflect and I've been grateful for this time that we have to share together. I know Tuesday mornings for many of us at 8 a.m. we may be getting ready for work. We may not be up because we're not morning people. And so I'm always grateful for those that watch this video later. Grateful for those that share this video with others. If something was said or reflected on, I encourage you to share this video with others. And to join us on Sundays at 3 p.m. at 1407 Sherwood Avenue, event door number 4. We worship at Diversity Richmond. And this Sunday we will be continuing our reflection and Bible study on faith and social justice in the prophet Isaiah. It seems to be so timely, given the moment that we're currently living in. And so I welcome you to come to that. We also do corporate prayer at 2:30, community prayer. And so you're definitely invited to meet us at 2:30. And then I'm trying to think. So prayer on Thursday is still on hold. We will restart prayer on Thursday nights beginning in September. And so the other opportunity to connect with us is again on Tuesday morning. And we have an upcoming event, community resilience, our resilience series on August 27th. Blah, 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 blah. Excuse me. August 27th, and it is called Reclaiming Our Faith. Storytelling circles a storytelling circle for those of us who have experienced church hurt and spiritual trauma. A way for us to build our resilience is through telling our story. It is through hearing the stories of others. It is through acknowledging the realities and the truths that sometimes church and church folks hurt us. Sometimes the one institution that we believe was meant to inspire us and to help us become better people has actually inflicted more pain and more sorrow and more hurt than what I think it was created for, and others think it was created for. So that's on August 27th, and we invite you to come out to that Sunday afternoon. And until then, join us again Sundays at 3 p.m. Diversity Richmond, or with me here 8 a.m. on Tuesday mornings for Talk About It Tuesday. I encourage you to talk about what it means to be in the moment today. I thank you for listening. I thank you for showing up. I thank you for sharing this video. I thank you for watching it later. And I am always open and welcome to questions and topics that can be reflected on and placed in conversation as we are all striving to make sense of what being in this moment means and what it looks like. So have a wonderful day. Do something good for yourself and for someone else. And remember to talk about what it means to be in this moment. I'm Pastor Lisette of Restoration Fellowship. Have an awesome day.